Present day 2024. My name is Emma Harrison, and I am 32 years old when I discover that my grandmother lived an entire lifetime I knew nothing about. I find this out not through family stories or deathbed confessions, but through a wooden box hidden in the attic of the house she left me. A box containing 217 letters, written over 50 years. Letters that were never sent. Letters that tell a love story so profound and so tragic that it changes everything I thought I knew about love, about family, about the choices we make and the ones that are made for us. My grandmother, Helen Morrison, died in January 2024 at the age of 98. She had lived a good life, married to my grandfather Robert for 47 years until his death, raised 3 children, built a successful career as a librarian, volunteered at the church, was beloved by everyone who knew her. She was the matriarch of our family, the woman who held us all together, who remembered everyone's birthdays, who made the best apple pie, who gave advice that was always kind and usually right. I thought I knew her. I thought the stories she told about growing up in post-war Berlin, immigrating to America in 1952, meeting my grandfather at a church social were the complete picture. I thought the gentle, proper woman who taught me to bake and read and believe in the goodness of people was exactly who she had always been. I was wrong. Grandma Helen had secrets, and those secrets were waiting for me in a box in the attic of the house in Providence, Rhode Island, that she left me in her will. I had driven up from New York to start clearing out the house, a task I had been dreading. The house was full of 80 years of accumulated belongings, memories packed into every closet and drawer. I wasn't ready to dismantle my grandmother's life, to sort through her things and decide what to keep and what to donate, to acknowledge that she was truly gone. The attic was dusty and hot, crammed with boxes labeled in my grandmother's neat handwriting, Christmas decorations, Robert's books, children's artwork. I was methodically working through them, creating piles for keeping and discarding, when I found a box pushed far back in a corner, hidden behind old suitcases and furniture. It was unlabeled, locked with a small padlock that had rusted with age. I almost left it alone. I almost added it to the deal with later pile and moved on. But something about it called to me. Why would my grandmother lock a box and hide it so carefully? What was inside that she hadn't wanted anyone to find? I broke the lock with a screwdriver. Inside the box, wrapped in tissue paper that crumbled at my touch, were letters. Hundreds of them, bundled with ribbons, organized by year, spanning from 1946 to 1998. They were handwritten, some on expensive stationery, others on scraps of paper or the backs of receipts. Some were long, others just a few lines. But all of them began the same way: my dearest James. I sat on the attic floor and began to read. Hours passed. The afternoon light faded. I read letter after letter, watching my grandmother's handwriting evolve over decades, following a story I had never known existed. And slowly, impossibly, I began to understand. My grandmother had loved another man. Before my grandfather, parallel to my grandfather, maybe instead of my grandfather, I couldn't tell yet. A man named James, an American soldier she had met in the rubble of post-war Berlin. A man she had loved with a passion and desperation that made my chest ache. A man she had written to for over 50 years, letters that were never sent, letters that documented a love affair that existed only on paper and in her heart. The earliest letters from 1946 were love letters between 2 young people in impossible circumstances. Helen was 18, German, living in the ruins of Berlin with her mother and younger sister. James was 22, an American soldier, part of the occupation forces, from a small town in Pennsylvania. They had met when he was distributing food rations and she was translating for other Germans. The letters described stolen moments, secret meetings, the way love bloomed even in devastation. But then the letters changed. In 1947, James was sent back to America. Helen's letters became desperate, begging him to find a way to bring her over, to marry her, to build the life they had dreamed about. She was pregnant, she wrote. She was carrying his child, a daughter born in October 1947. My mother, who I had always believed was my grandfather Robert's daughter, was actually this James's child. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My mother had died 10 years ago, never knowing that Robert Morrison wasn't her biological father. Or had she known? Had my grandmother told her? I would never know. The letters continued through the decades. Helen married Robert in 1952, but she never stopped writing to James. The letters became less desperate, more reflective. She told him about her life in America, about raising his daughter, about the guilt she felt for marrying another man, but the gratitude too for Robert's kindness. She told him she thought of him every day, that she had never stopped loving him, that she wondered constantly what their life might have been if circumstances had been different. And then, in 1970, something changed. Helen wrote that she had received a letter from James, the only one he had ever managed to send her in 23 years. He had been searching for her, had finally tracked her down through military records and immigration documents. He was married too, had children, had built a life in Pennsylvania. But he had never forgotten her, had never stopped loving her. He asked if they could correspond, if they could maintain some connection across the impossible distance. Helen's letters after that were different. They were no longer one-sided confessions but responses to letters she was receiving. A dialogue, secret and sustained over nearly 30 years. They shared their lives through paper and ink, their children's achievements, their marriages, struggles and joys, their dreams and regrets. They were having an affair, but one of words rather than bodies, of emotional intimacy rather than physical. Was that better or worse than a conventional affair? I couldn't decide. The last letter in the box was dated March 1998, 6 months before my grandfather Robert died. Helen wrote that James had passed away, that his daughter had contacted her to tell her that a piece of her soul had died with him. She wrote that she had loved 2 men in her life, James with passion and impossibility, Robert with gratitude and genuine affection. She wrote that she regretted nothing and regretted everything, that love was more complicated than she had ever imagined when she was 18 and falling for an American soldier in the ruins of Berlin. I sat in that attic as darkness fell, surrounded by letters, crying for a grandmother I had never truly known, for a love story that had been hidden for 78 years, for all the complexity and pain and beauty contained in those carefully preserved pages. And I knew I had to find him. Not James, he was gone, but his family, his children. I had to know if he had kept Helen's letters too, if this love affair had been documented from both sides, if there was more to the story than what I held in my hands. I had to find James's family, and I had to understand what had really happened between my grandmother and this American soldier who had changed the course of her entire life. Berlin, 1946. My name is Helen Schmidt, and I am 18 years old when I meet the man who will define my entire life. I meet him in the rubble of Berlin, in a city that has been bombed into dust and despair, in a world where yesterday's enemies are today's occupiers and tomorrow is impossible to imagine. The war has been over for a year, but Berlin is still dying. There is no food, no fuel, no hope. My father was killed in the final days of fighting, defending a regime that had brought nothing but destruction to our country and the world. My older brother died on the Russian front in 1943. It is just me, my mother and my younger sister Greta, trying to survive in a bombed-out apartment building, scavenging for food, trading family heirlooms for bread, wearing the same clothes for months because there is nothing else. The Americans, British and French have divided the city into sectors. We live in the American sector, which everyone says is the best luck, better than the Russians who are brutal or the French who are cold. The Americans bring food, medicine, organization. They are trying to rebuild what we destroyed. Some Germans hate them for it, resenting the conquerors. Others, like my mother, are simply grateful to be alive and have access to ration cards. I work as a translator for the American occupation authorities. I learned English in school before the war, and in a city where most people speak only German, my language skills make me valuable. I help distribute rations, translate orders and announcements, facilitate communication between the occupiers and the occupied. It is strange work, mediating between my people and the victors, but it pays in food and a small amount of money, and my family needs both desperately. James Walker is one of the American soldiers assigned to our sector. He is 22 years old, from a place called Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which he describes as beautiful farmland, where his family has lived for generations. He is tall and kind, with brown hair and eyes that crinkle when he smiles. He treats Germans with respect rather than contempt, tries to learn our language, goes out of his way to help when he can. I notice him immediately. Everyone notices him. He has that quality that draws eyes, that makes people want to be near him, but I think he notices me too. He asks for me specifically when he needs translation help. He brings extra rations for my family. He asks questions about my life before the war, about what I want for the future, about whether I have hope that things will get better. We fall in love slowly, carefully, knowing that what we are doing is forbidden by regulation, if not by law. American soldiers are not supposed to fraternize with German women. We are the enemy, the people who started the war, who supported Hitler, who bear collective guilt for the Holocaust and all the horror that has been revealed. But James sees me as Helen, not as German. And I see him as James, not as American occupier. We meet secretly, in the evenings after his duties end, in the ruins of buildings where no one goes. We talk for hours about everything, about the war and what came before, about our families and dreams, about the impossibility of what we are feeling. James tells me about Pennsylvania, about farms and churches and Friday night football games, about a world so normal it seems like fiction compared to the hell Berlin has become. I tell him about Berlin before the bombing, about opera and cafes and Sunday walks, about a city and a life that no longer exists. We kiss for the first time in December 1946 in a bombed-out church, surrounded by rubble and the ghost of faith. It is freezing cold, and we are both shaking, but not from the temperature. When he pulls me close, when his lips touch mine, I feel something I haven't felt since before the war. Hope. The possibility that life could be beautiful again, that I could have a future worth living. We become lovers that winter. It is dangerous, reckless, forbidden. If we are caught, James could be court-martialed, I could lose my position. But we cannot stop ourselves. Love in the ruins is different from love in peace, more intense, more desperate, more willing to accept risk, because the alternative is continued darkness. James says he wants to marry me, bring me to America, build a life together. He has started researching regulations, requirements, possibilities. It is difficult but not impossible for American soldiers to marry German women and bring them home. It requires paperwork, approvals, patience. But it can be done. We can be together legally, openly, permanently. I believe him. I believe in us. I believe that love can transcend nationality and history and all the reasons we are supposed to hate each other. I discover I am pregnant in March 1947. I am terrified and overjoyed in equal measure. This baby is proof of our love, but also proof of our crime, physical evidence of fraternization, of violation of military regulations. James is thrilled despite the danger. He promises this changes nothing, that he will expedite the paperwork, that we will be married before the baby comes, that our child will be born legitimate and American. But then everything falls apart. In April, James's commanding officer discovers our relationship. There has been a crackdown on fraternization, and James is being made an example. He is given a choice: end the relationship immediately and face only administrative punishment, or continue and face court-martial, dishonorable discharge, and possible criminal charges. James fights for us. He argues, he appeals, he tries every avenue. But military justice is inflexible. He has given orders to return to the United States immediately, no exceptions, no delays. He has 1 week before shipping out. We meet one final time in our ruined church, and we both know this is goodbye. James cries, promises he will find a way to bring me over, to sponsor my immigration, to reunite us. He gives me his address in Pennsylvania, makes me promise to write, tells me he loves me and will never stop loving me. I tell him the same, and I mean it with every cell of my body. Then he is gone, shipped back to America, separated from me by an ocean and regulations and all the reasons the victors and the defeated aren't supposed to love each other. I write to him immediately the day after he leaves, long letters explaining the pregnancy, begging him to help, to find a way to bring me to America. I mail them to his Pennsylvania address and wait for responses that never come. I write again and again. 10 letters, 20, 30, desperate messages asking if he received my previous letters, if he still loves me. if he remembers his promises, but nothing comes back. Either my letters aren't reaching him, or he has decided to abandon me and his unborn child. I don't know which is worse. I give birth to our daughter in October 1947. I name her Margaret, strong and defiant, a name that works in both German and English, a name for a child who belongs to two worlds. She has James's brown eyes and my blonde hair. She is beautiful and perfect, and every time I look at her I see him. My mother is ashamed of the pregnancy, of my unwed status, of the American father who isn't here. But she helps me anyway, because what choice do we have? We tell neighbors that the father was a German soldier killed in the war. It is easier than the truth. I continue writing to James for 2 years. 147 letters sent to Pennsylvania, each one a message in a bottle thrown into an ocean of silence. I tell him about Margaret, about how she smiled for the first time, said her first word, took her first steps. I tell him I still love him, still believe in us, still hope he will find a way to bring us together, but I'm losing faith. Either he never receives my letters, or he has chosen to pretend I don't exist. In 1949, I meet Robert Morrison. He is an American civilian working with the Marshall Plan, helping to rebuild German industry. He is 30 years old, kind, stable, not handsome, but good. He knows about Margaret, knows she is another man's child, and he doesn't care. He says he wants to marry me, to help me emigrate to America, to raise Margaret as his own. He offers what James promised but couldn't deliver: safety, legitimacy, a future. I don't love Robert, not the way I loved James, but love is a luxury I can no longer afford. Margaret needs a father. My mother and sister need help, and I am so tired of being poor and desperate and living in ruins. So I say yes to Robert's proposal, and I bury my love for James as deep as I can. We marry in 1950 and emigrate to America in 1952, to Providence, Rhode Island, where Robert has secured a job. Margaret becomes Margaret Morrison, Robert's legal daughter. My mother and Greta come too, starting new lives far from the bombed-out Berlin we fled. Robert is a good husband, patient, kind, supportive. He treats Margaret as his own, never reminding her or me that she isn't. He works hard, provides well, builds us a comfortable middle-class life. I try to be a good wife to him. I cook and clean and raise children. Margaret, and then 2 more children Robert and I have together. I volunteer at church and make friends and play the role of respectable American housewife. But I never stop loving James. I write him letters I never send, 2 or 3 a year, telling him about my life, about Margaret, about the what-ifs that haunt me. I keep them in a box hidden in my closet, proof that part of my heart never left that ruined Berlin church where we said goodbye. Then in 1970, after 23 years of silence, I receive a letter from James. He has found me. Present day, 2024. It took me 3 weeks to find James Walker's family. 3 weeks of genealogy websites, social media searches, public records, and an increasingly obsessive need to know what happened to the man my grandmother loved. I learned that James Walker had returned to Lancaster, Pennsylvania in 1947. He had married his high school sweetheart, Dorothy, in 1948. They'd had 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. He'd worked as a teacher, been active in his church, coached Little League. He died in January 1998 at age 73 of a heart attack. Dorothy had died in 2015. But James and Dorothy's children were still alive, and one of them, the daughter, Susan Walker Thompson, had an active Facebook profile and an email address I found through some creative searching. I agonized over what to write. How do you contact a stranger to tell them that their father had a secret love affair with a German woman for 50 years? How do you explain that you're the granddaughter of that woman, that your mother was actually their father's child, that your entire family history is different from what you believed? In the end, I wrote simply, "My name is Emma Harrison. My grandmother recently passed away, and I found letters she had written to your father over many decades. I believe they knew each other in Berlin after the war. I would very much like to speak with you about them if you're willing. I have information I think you'd want to know." I hit send before I could overthink it further. And then I waited, heart pounding, for a response that might never come. It came 3 days later. Susan Walker Thompson wrote, "I think we need to talk." My father also left letters, many letters, from a woman named Helen Schmidt. Are we talking about the same people? We agreed to meet, halfway between New York and Lancaster at a restaurant in New Jersey, neutral territory for a conversation that was going to be anything but neutral. I arrived early, clutching the box of letters like a life preserver. I had spent the last week rereading them obsessively, trying to understand my grandmother through these decades of secret communication. The woman in the letters was both the grandmother I knew and a stranger, more passionate, more conflicted, more complicated than the gentle librarian who had raised me to believe in happily ever after. Susan arrived exactly on time. She was in her late 60s, with grey hair and her father's kind eyes. She was carrying her own box of letters, larger than mine, which made sense. My grandmother's letters had never been sent. James's had. We sat down across from each other, and for a long moment just stared, two strangers connected by a love affair we'd known nothing about until recently. "So," Susan said finally, "our parents had quite a story." I laughed, a sound that came out more like a sob. That's one way to put it. We spent the next 6 hours going through the letters together, matching them chronologically, filling in gaps. Susan's box contained James's letters to Helen, the ones he had written but largely never sent, plus some he had sent after they reconnected in 1970. Together, the two collections told a complete story. The story of James frantically writing to Helen after returning to Pennsylvania, letters that were never delivered because military mail from Germans to America was heavily restricted and often simply destroyed. Dozens of letters in 1947 and 1948 asking about her, begging her to respond, having no idea she was writing to him just as desperately. The story of James being pressured by his family to move on, to marry Dorothy, to accept that his German girlfriend was gone, and that wartime romances didn't survive peace. The story of him trying to be a good husband while grieving a love he'd never gotten to finish. The story of James searching for Helen periodically over the decades, using whatever resources he had, finally succeeding in 1970 when immigration records became more accessible. Finding her married to another man, living in Rhode Island, mother of 3 children, writing to her anyway just once, just to know she was alive and well, expecting nothing. And the story of Helen responding immediately, pouring out 23 years of silence, explaining the pregnancy and Margaret and her marriage to Robert, and how she had never stopped loving James despite building a life with another man. After that first exchange, James and Helen had written to each other regularly for 28 years, 2 or 3 letters a year, timed carefully so that neither spouse would discover them. They shared their lives, their children's achievements, their marriage's difficulties and joys. They maintained an intimacy that was deep and real, despite being composed entirely of paper and ink. "My mother had an affair," I said at some point, my voice hollow. "An emotional affair that lasted longer than most marriages." "So did my father," Susan replied, "and I have no idea how to feel about it." We sat in silence, processing. Our parents had been good people. Everyone who knew them agreed. Robert Morrison and Dorothy Walker had both been kind, faithful, loving spouses by all accounts. But Helen and James had loved each other too, separately and secretly, a parallel marriage of words rather than presence. Was that betrayal? Or was it a different kind of faithfulness to a first love, to an impossible promise, to the people they had been before obligation and duty shaped them into who they became? "There's something else," Susan said finally, pulling out a photograph from her box. "My father kept this his entire life, in his wallet. My mother found it after he died and gave it to me. She said she'd known about it for years, but it had never threatened their marriage because it was a ghost he was carrying, not another woman." She handed me the photograph. It was small, black and white, creased from decades in a wallet. It showed a young woman, maybe 18 or 19, standing in rubble, smiling despite the devastation around her. She was beautiful, high cheekbones, light hair, striking eyes. "That's my grandmother," I whispered. "That's Helen." "My father carried her picture for 50 years, Susan said softly. "He loved my mother, I truly believe that, but he also loved your grandmother." Both things were true. I reached into my bag and pulled out something I'd brought, a photograph of my grandmother from the 1990s, taken at my mother's college graduation. Helen was in her 70s, still beautiful. Her hair white, but her eyes still bright. "This is the woman who wrote letters to your father for decades," I said. The woman who married my grandfather, but never stopped thinking about yours." Susan took the photo, studied it, tears forming. "They really loved each other," she said. "For 75 years, across impossible distance, they loved each other. I don't know whether it's beautiful or tragic. Maybe both," I said. We talked through the afternoon and into the evening, sharing stories about our families, discovering connections and parallels. Susan's oldest brother was born the same year as my mother, Margaret, both children of 1947, one legitimate, one not. Susan had become a teacher like her father. I had become a librarian like my grandmother. Our families had lived parallel lives, shaped by the same love affair, completely unaware of each other. As the evening wore on and we prepared to leave, Susan asked, "What do we do with all this? With the letters and the story and the secret that's not secret anymore, because the people who kept it are gone?" I'd been thinking about that for weeks. "I think we tell it," I said. "Not to shame anyone or rewrite history, but because it's true and it's theirs, and maybe it matters. Maybe understanding that love is more complicated than we want to believe, that good people can love more than one person, that the heart doesn't follow rules. Maybe that matters." Susan nodded slowly. "My father was a good man. He loved my mother, was faithful to her in all the ways that count, but he also carried your grandmother in his heart his entire life. I'm trying to accept that both things can be true." "So am I said. We exchanged contact information, promised to stay in touch, to continue exploring our family's intertwined history. As we parted ways in the parking lot, Susan hugged me. This stranger who was somehow family now, connected by a love affair we'd never witnessed, but that shaped both our existences. Over the following months, Susan and I became close. We met regularly, compared family trees, shared photographs and memories. We discovered that her brother Michael lived in Boston, less than an hour from Providence, and had actually met my grandmother once at a library conference in the 1980s. Neither knew the connection, but my grandmother had apparently mentioned him in a letter to James afterward, noting the weird coincidence of meeting someone from Lancaster at a random conference. We discovered that my mother Margaret and Susan's brother Robert had both studied at Penn State in the 1960s, overlapping for 2 years, possibly passing each other on campus without knowing they were half-siblings. The connections were everywhere once we started looking. Two families living parallel lives, shaped by the same love story, perpetually almost touching but never quite meeting. And then Susan's youngest brother, Thomas Walker, came to one of our meetings. He was 65, a recently retired lawyer, recently divorced. He had driven down from Lancaster to Providence because Susan had told him about the letters, about me, about the whole impossible story. Thomas Walker had his father's kind eyes and his mother's serious expression. He was quiet where Susan was effusive, thoughtful where she was impulsive. He sat in my grandmother's house, which I was slowly clearing out but couldn't quite bring myself to sell, and read through the letters with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Your grandmother had a beautiful heart," he said finally, looking up from a letter dated 1983. "The way she writes about small moments, teaching her grandchildren to bake, watching autumn leaves fall, rereading books she loved. She found joy despite carrying this enormous secret." "She did," I agreed. "She was the happiest sad person I ever knew, if that makes sense." "It makes perfect sense," Thomas said. "My father was the same way. Content, but wistful, like he was always partly somewhere else." We talked for hours that day, Thomas and Susan and I, piecing together the full story from both sides. Thomas was particularly interested in the historical context, the occupation policies that had prevented my grandmother and his father from being together, the immigration barriers, the social stigma that would have surrounded a German war bride in 1940s America. "They were victims of circumstances," Thomas said, "not of their own choices, but of history, timing, policies that treated people as categories rather than individuals." "But they also made choices," I countered. "My grandmother chose to marry Robert even though she loved your father. Your father chose to marry your mother, to build a life in Lancaster. They chose safety over passion. Can you blame them?" Thomas asked gently. "Look at what passion had gotten them. Separation, pregnancy, stigma. Maybe choosing safety was the brave thing, not the cowardly thing." I hadn't thought of it that way. I'd been so focused on the romance of their love, the tragedy of their separation, that I hadn't considered that maybe staying apart was its own form of love, that maybe they had chosen their spouse's happiness, their children's security, over their own desires, that maybe that was more noble than running away together would have been. Thomas kept coming back, once a week at first, then twice, then he just sort of never left. He took time off work to help me go through my grandmother's belongings, to organize decades of accumulated life. He read through all the letters, every single one, treating them like precious artifacts. And somewhere in those weeks of sorting through the past, Thomas and I started building our own present. It wasn't a lightning bolt, wasn't love at first sight. It was quieter than that. It was shared understanding, common grief, the comfort of talking to someone who got it. It was working side by side in my grandmother's attic, finding her hidden treasures, piecing together her secret life. It was Thomas making me laugh when I was crying over a box of my grandmother's photographs. It was me making him tea the way he liked it, without having to ask anymore. It was falling asleep on the couch together after a long day of sorting, waking up with his arm around me, feeling safe in a way I hadn't felt in years. Susan noticed before we did. She arrived one afternoon to find Thomas and me cooking dinner together in my grandmother's kitchen, moving around each other with unconscious familiarity, finishing each other's sentences. She stood in the doorway watching us for a moment, then started laughing. "Oh my God," she said, "you two are falling in love." Thomas and I looked at each other, startled, then back at Susan. "We're not," I started. "We're just," Thomas said simultaneously. "You're absolutely falling in love," Susan said, grinning. "This is insane, this is perfect, this is exactly what should happen." "It's not perfect," I argued. "It's weird. We're connected because our grandparents had an affair. That's a terrible foundation for a relationship." "Is it?" Susan challenged. "Or is it the most perfect foundation imaginable? Your grandmother and my father loved each other, but couldn't be together because of circumstances. You and Thomas are free of those circumstances. You get to finish what they started. You get to have the happy ending they couldn't have." Thomas took my hand tentatively. "Is that what we're doing?" he asked. "Finishing their story." I looked at him. This kind, thoughtful man who had appeared in my life through the most impossible circumstances, who understood my grief because he carried the same one, who had spent months helping me understand my grandmother, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. "No," I said slowly. "I think we're starting our own story. One that's inspired by theirs, but not determined by it." "I like that better," Thomas said, smiling. Berlin, 1970. I am 42 years old when I receive the letter that changes everything. It arrives at my home in Providence on an ordinary Tuesday in March, mixed in with bills and advertisements. The return address says James Walker, Lancaster, PA. My hands shake as I open it. 23 years of silence and now this. A letter. From him. After I had given up hope. After I had built an entire life without him. After I had convinced myself that what we had was a beautiful dream that died in 1947, he reaches out. The letter is short, tentative. He explains that he has spent years trying to find me, that military records and immigration databases were sealed until recently, that he finally managed to track me down through sheer persistence. He says he knows I'm married, that he's married too, that he doesn't want to disrupt my life. He just needs to know that I'm well, that I'm happy, that the woman he loved in Berlin survived and built a good life. He includes a photograph, him at 45, older but recognizably the same man I loved, standing with his wife Dorothy and 3 children, all of them smiling. A good life, he wrote, but not the one we planned. I write back immediately. 23 years of words pour out of me, about Margaret, about Robert, about America and motherhood and loss and resilience. I tell him I think of him every day, that I have never stopped loving him even though I love Robert too in a different way. I tell him about the letters I write but never send, the parallel life I live on paper. And I ask the question that has haunted me for 2 decades. Did he get my letters from 1947-1949? Did he receive the 147 messages I sent begging him to rescue us, telling him about his daughter, pleading for help? His response, 3 weeks later, breaks my heart all over again. No, he never received a single letter. The military had destroyed mail from German nationals to American soldiers, afraid of romantic entanglements, afraid of soldiers being manipulated by the enemy. My letters had been intercepted and burned. His letters to me had suffered the same fate. We had both been writing, both desperate to reach each other, both thinking we'd been abandoned. The silence that destroyed our future had been imposed by authorities who saw us as categories, occupier and occupied, victor and defeated, rather than two people in love. If just one letter had gotten through, just one, everything might have been different, but it hadn't, and here we are. Middle-aged, married to other people, parents to other people's children, carrying a love that survived despite never being fed. We begin corresponding regularly, 2 or 3 letters a year, timed carefully. Robert travels for work often. I write to James during those absences. James's wife Dorothy knows about me. He told her early in their marriage about the German girl he'd loved and lost. She doesn't know he's writing to me now, but James says she wouldn't mind. She's secure in his love because she has it every day. I have only paper and memory. The letters become my lifeline. They're where I'm most honest, most myself. I love Robert. Truly, I do. He's been good to me, and Margaret has given me stability and security. But with James, I can be the girl I was in Berlin, the one who believed in grand romance, who chose love despite danger, who was willing to risk everything for connection. We write about our children, our marriages, our aging parents. We write about books and politics and the changing world. We write about memory, how it shifts and softens, how the past becomes more beautiful in retrospect, how we're not sure anymore if we're remembering reality or fiction. And we write about what might have been, the life in America we would have built, the children we would have raised together, the ordinary happiness we would have created if the world hadn't interfered. Are we having an affair? I ask him once, in a letter from 1985. Only in the purest sense, he responds. Our hearts have been faithful to each other, even while our bodies remained faithful to our spouses. Is that betrayal, or is it a different kind of loyalty? I don't know anymore. I don't know either. Present day, 2024. Thomas and I got married in October 2024, 9 months after finding the letters, surrounded by family who finally understood the full story of Helen and James. Susan was my maid of honor. Thomas's brothers, my mother's half-brothers, though she never knew it, walked me down the aisle. My children and Thomas's children from his first marriage stood with us, a blended family built on the foundation of our grandparents' impossible love. We held the ceremony in Providence in my grandmother's garden, which we had spent months restoring. And we included something unusual in the ceremony, a reading of 2 letters, one from Helen to James in 1946, one from James to Helen in 1970. Our vows echoed theirs, completing sentences they had started 78 years earlier. You are my first love, I read from Helen's letter, and you will be my last thought. Circumstances separated us, but nothing could diminish what we felt. I have spent my life carrying you in my heart, Thomas read from James's letter. You were the road not taken, the life I imagined but couldn't have. But knowing you existed, knowing you were in the world, made everything bearable. Then Thomas and I said our own vows, words we had written together. We stand here not to recreate the past, but to honor it by building something new. We carry the love of Helen and James forward, not as a burden, but as a blessing. What they couldn't finish, we begin. What they couldn't have, we claim. We are proof that love transcends time, that connections persist across generations, that even star-crossed lovers can have their story completed, if not by them, then by those who come after. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Even Thomas's brothers, stoic men in their 60s, were crying. After the ceremony, during the reception, Susan pulled me aside. She had something to show me, a final letter, one she'd only recently found in her father's belongings. It was dated December 1997, written by James just weeks before he died. It was addressed to whoever finds this, which turned out to be Susan, going through his desk after his death. The letter said, "To whoever reads this, probably one of my children, hopefully not Dorothy, though if it is, honey, I'm sorry for the secrets. I want you to know about Helen Schmidt, the woman I loved before your mother, the woman I never stopped loving even after I married Dorothy. This sounds like betrayal, but it isn't. Or maybe it is. I'm old and dying and I don't know anymore. Here's what I know. I loved two women in my life. I loved Helen with the passion of youth, with impossible devotion, with the kind of love that poets write about and sensible people avoid. I loved Dorothy with gratitude and respect and genuine affection, with the steady love that builds families and survives decades. Were both loves real? Yes. Did one diminish the other? I don't think so. I was a good husband to Dorothy. I believe that. I was present, faithful, devoted in all the ways that matter. But part of my heart lived in letters to a woman in Rhode Island, in memories of rubble and stolen kisses, in dreams of what might have been. If you find Helen, and I hope you do, I hope you tell her goodbye for me. Tell her this: she made me a better man. Loving her taught me what it meant to love truly, which made me capable of loving Dorothy well. Our separation taught me the value of commitment, of choosing to stay even when leaving is tempting. And tell her that if there's anything after this, any next life or continuation, I'll be waiting in a ruined church in Berlin, and I hope she'll find me there. We'll have eternity to finish what we started. I love you all. I loved your mother, and I loved Helen Schmidt. All of it true, none of it diminishing the rest. James. I read the letter through tears, Thomas reading over my shoulder. When we finished, we stood together in silence, processing. He loved them both, Thomas said finally. And he didn't see that as contradiction. Neither did my grandmother, I replied. She wrote that Robert was her safe harbor and James was her North Star. She needed both. Do you think we're replacing them? Thomas asked. Living the life they couldn't have? No, I said firmly. We're honoring them by proving that their love wasn't wasted, that it created something, us. But this is our life, not theirs. Our life, Thomas repeated, pulling me close. I like the sound of that. Epilogue 2025. We found the final piece of the puzzle in May 2025, 13 months after my grandmother's death. Thomas and I were going through a last box of Helen's belongings, preparing to finally sell her house. We had been living in it since the wedding, turning it into our home. But we decided to move to something that was ours rather than inherited. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in cloth, we found a small jewelry box. Inside was a locket, old, tarnished silver, clearly well worn. I opened it carefully. On one side was a photograph of James, young and in uniform, the same photo my grandmother had been given in 1946. On the other side was a photograph I'd never seen, James as an older man, maybe in his 60s, smiling at the camera. There was an inscription on the inside of the locket, nearly worn away, Berlin to eternity, J. He sent her this, Thomas whispered. Sometime in the decades they were writing. He sent her an updated photograph so she could see how he aged, so she could know him as he became, not just as he was. I held the locket carefully, feeling the weight of decades of love and longing. She wore this, I realized, all those years, under her clothes where no one could see. She carried him with her every day. We found one more thing in that box, a letter unsealed addressed to Margaret Morrison, my mother. It was dated 2010, 14 years after my mother died of cancer. I never had the courage to give you this while you were alive, Helen had written. I was too afraid of your judgment, too ashamed of my choices, too protective of the version of me you believed in. But you deserve to know the truth about your father, about where you came from, about the love that created you. Your father's name was James Walker. He was a good man from Pennsylvania who loved me desperately in the ruins of Berlin. We were separated by regulations and politics and bad timing. He never knew about you, never got the letters where I told him you existed. When I finally found him again, you were 23 years old, married, starting your own life. Telling you then seemed cruel. It would have shattered your understanding of Robert, who loved you as completely as any biological father could, so I kept the secret. And I've lived with the guilt of it ever since. You had a father who never knew you existed, siblings you never met, an entire branch of family tree that remained unknown. I'm sorry I couldn't give you that. I'm sorry I chose my cowardice over your truth. But please know this, you were wanted. You were desperately wanted by both your father and me, and you were loved. by Robert, who chose to be your father when biology said he didn't have to be, and by James, who would have moved heaven and earth to reach you if he'd known you existed. I hope you can forgive me. I hope you understand. And I hope that somewhere, somehow, you and James have met in whatever comes after, and he finally got to tell you that you were his daughter. All my love, Mama, I cried as I read it. My mother had died never knowing, never meeting her half-siblings, never understanding why she looked so different from her siblings, why she had brown eyes when everyone else had blue. But maybe, I thought, this was why the letters had survived, why they'd been kept, carefully preserved, waiting to be found. Not by my mother, who it would have hurt, but by me, a generation removed, who could handle the truth without it destroying my understanding of my family. We should tell them, I said to Thomas, your siblings. They should know they have another sister, even if she's gone. They should know Margaret existed. And your children should know about their grandfather, Thomas added. The real one. Both of them. Robert, who raised their grandmother, and James, who gave her life. So we did. We arranged a gathering. All of James's descendants and Margaret's, my children, Thomas's children, Susan and her siblings, cousins and grandchildren, a family that had never known it was a family. We told the whole story, we read letters aloud, we passed around photographs. We traced the connection, how Helen and James's love in 1946 had created Margaret, and how Margaret had created me, and how finding James's letters had led me to Thomas, and how we were all connected by this long thread of love and loss and persistence. And we decided to do something permanent. We commissioned a memorial bench in a park in Providence with a plaque that read, Helen Schmidt Morrison, 1928-2024, and James Walker, 1924-1998. Berlin to eternity, love transcends time, distance, and circumstance. This bench celebrates a love that lasted 75 years across impossible separation. May all who sit here remember that the heart knows no borders. At the dedication ceremony, with both families present, Susan read one final passage from the very last letter in Helen's box, written in November 2023, just months before she died. My dearest James, I am 95 years old now. You have been gone 25 years. Soon I will be gone too, and our letters will be all that remains of what we were to each other. I hope someone finds them. I hope they read them and understand that love doesn't have to be conventional to be real, that you can love two people truly, that choosing safety over passion isn't betrayal. Sometimes it's the brave thing. That romance doesn't require a happy ending to be meaningful. I loved you in Berlin. I loved you from Providence. I loved you through 50 years of letters. I loved you while loving Robert. All of it true, all of it real. I'll see you in the ruined church. Save me a dance. Forever yours, Helen. There wasn't a dry eye on the hill. Two families, once separate, now united by understanding. Two love stories. Helen and James's impossible love, and Thomas and mine, built on the foundation they'd laid. That night, Thomas and I walked through Providence hand in hand, talking about our grandparents and fate, and whether love really does transcend time. Do you think they know? Thomas asked. Wherever they are, do you think they know we found each other? That their story had a happy ending after all? I think they know, I said. I think they've known all along. I think they've been pulling strings from whatever comes next, making sure we found those letters, making sure we found each other. That's a nice thought, Thomas said. It's more than nice, I replied. It's true. We're proof that love doesn't die. It transforms, it persists. It finds new forms, new people to carry it forward. Helen and James loved each other for 75 years. And now we get to love each other for however many years we have, carrying their love with us, completing what they started. Thomas stopped walking, turned to face me, took both my hands. I love you, Emma Harrison Walker, he said. Not because you're Helen's granddaughter or because I'm James's grandson, but because you're you, brilliant, kind, funny, brave enough to reach out to a stranger because of letters you found in an attic. I love you too, I said. And I'm grateful every day for those letters, for the love story that was never finished, because it brought me to you, and this, us, this gets to be finished. This gets to be the happy ending. We kissed there on the Providence Street, two people connected by history but creating our own future. Proof that love persists across generations, that the heart knows no borders, that sometimes the most impossible love stories are the ones that matter most. Behind us, if you believed in such things, you might have seen two figures in the streetlight. A young man in a 1940s uniform and a young woman in a worn dress, holding hands, smiling, finally together in whatever comes after. But Thomas and I weren't looking back. We were looking forward to our future, to our love, to the life we got to build, because two people in Berlin refused to let go, even when everything said they should. The letters had been found. The story had been told. And love, as it always does, had found a way. The end.